Started. Can everyone see my screen with the slides on it? Does that look okay to?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so welcome. Thanks again for everyone for taking time to be here. I'll try to be prudent with your time. There we go. This slide is just a slide of all the sites that we're aware of. There's everyone's site number if you need that. But I'll also make sure that you guys have access to these slides as well. Here is a list of the contacts for the study. My name is Melissa Allard. I am the lead pharmacist here at IU Health, or Indiana University. Another email that is our general kind of shared email address is ids@iuhealth.org. If you want to copy that on any correspondence in case you get a bounce back that I'm out of the office or something, the people who are reviewing that email box will triage to that so that someone can answer your question. Our shipping address and other information is there as well. So there's three big kind of changes to the amendment for the AlcHepNet 02 RCT trial. The first thing is that they removed the filgrastim arm, and I'm going to pause for applause. No, just teasing. But that did really simplify this trial quite a bit from our standpoint. The second thing is they added a COVID-19 test to screening of patients. And then the third thing is that they added a stopping rule to the prednisone arm if the Lilly score is above 0.45. So we'll talk about those changes. But I'm still going to give kind of an overview of the whole trial just as a refresher and hopefully to make it a little bit clearer. So the objectives and design of this trial is to determine the clinical efficacy and safety of anakinra plus zinc compared to the current standard of medical treatment, which consists of prednisone in patients with clinically severe alcoholic hepatitis. The key secondary objectives are to evaluate the use of biomarkers to assess disease severity and treatment response, and then also to develop novel endpoints to overcome the limitations of current assessment strategies for severe alcoholic hepatitis. Our enrollment goals, with dropping the filgrastim arm, there are just 2 arms now, and so that's also decreasing the size of the study by about 1/3. So there'll be 129 subjects in each the prednisone placebo arm and the anakinra zinc placebo arm. So roughly there'll be 33 subjects at each site, enrollment period over 3 years, and they hope to, by the end of this year, still get maybe 6 or 7 subjects per site. The design of the study kind of spoke to this just a second ago. Now there are 2 kind of arms, either the prednisone placebo, where the patient is going to receive oral prednisone 40 milligrams per day for 30 days, or they will receive anakinra 100 milligrams subcutaneously daily for 14 days, plus zinc 220 milligram daily for 90 days. So those are the 2 arms. And here's what this will look like as randomized controlled double-blinded trial. So in arm 1, all the patients will receive prednisone daily on days 1 through 30. They'll also receive a placebo anakinra injection on days 1 through 14 and a placebo zinc capsule on days 1 through 90. Patients in arm 2 who would be getting the active anakinra and zinc would receive active anakinra injections subcutaneously daily on days 1 through 14, plus zinc daily from days 1 through 90. That's 220 milligrams. And then a placebo for the prednisone on days 1 through 30. So in this new in the new design, patients are going to receive 2 capsules a day. They'll be getting either prednisone or placebo, and either zinc or placebo. So depending on which arm they're in, everyone will receive 2 capsules daily. And then one supply will be for first 30 days, and then the next supply will be for the days 1 through 90. So the treatment holding and stopping rules, just kind of generally, still, if the patient is inpatient or on day 7, if they're outpatient and they test the platelet count and it's less than 50,000, during that first 14 days of injectable therapy, we're going to hold the anakinra. If the patient is receiving active anakinra, is randomized to the anakinra arm by substituting placebo syringe as directed by REDCOP, and that way the patients will all 14 days be receiving 1 injection daily. For the GFR, kind of the same thing. They'll probably be getting daily labs while they're in patient, or if they happen to be discharged on day 7, or if they happen to come in for some other time. If the GFR is less than 30 mils per minute but greater than 20 mils per minute, then they will substitute out placebo on that day, and then anakinra on the following day. And so then they are switching it to every other day dosing, so for that 14 days. If the GFR drops to less than 20 mils per minute, then the patients will receive straight placebo. And then the new thing for this, with this amendment, is the Lille score on day 7 would be calculated, and if it is not less than 0.45, then the patients will stop the prednisone placebo bottle, number 1. Just briefly going over inclusion and exclusion criteria for this study. Patients have alcoholic hepatitis, as defined by the NIAAA PAN Consortia for Alcoholic Hepatitis. They have this criteria that kind of define it. And then patients are excluded from this trial. Here are the things that are listed on this slide and the following slide as exclusion criteria. The ones that really kind of affect pharmacy would be a GFR. So these patients are all going to start out with a GFR that's greater than 50. And then they're also going to have a platelet count that is greater than 50,000 as well. So kind of talked about the stopping rules, but here's kind of where the patient has to be before starting. So kind of spoke to this earlier. As far as the study arms, if patients are randomized to the prednisone arm, they're going to get 1 bottle of active prednisone, 1 bottle of placebo for zinc sulfate, and then they'll also get placebo subcutaneous therapy. If the patient is randomized to the anakinra zinc arm, they're also going to get 2 bottles of oral therapy. 1 would be placebo for prednisone. The second would be active zinc sulfate. And then subcutaneous therapy would be placebo syringes daily on days 1 through 14. So the drug supply will look like this. These are the actual bottles that we received from the University of Iowa. They are 50 count bottles, and we had already done this before. So there's only one placebo, and it's matched to both the prednisone and the zinc. So once the once the capsules are taken out of the bottles, they're identical. The 3 different capsules are identical. So based on, they'll be bottled and labeled on the bottles as to what they are. So there's 50 count bottles of prednisone 40 milligram capsules, 50 count bottles of zinc sulfate 220 milligram capsules, and then 50 count bottles of the placebo capsules. So that's what we're getting as far as those go. For subcutaneous therapy, we are ordering anakinra through our wholesaler. We use Cardinal, so we'll be purchasing that, billing that to the study, and then distributing it to each of the sites. And so that is commercial anakinra syringes. The placebo syringes look identical to the anakinra syringes. They're actually purchased from Sobi for this protocol, so it's the same syringe. It's a glass syringe, and that's a picture of the actual syringe. So it says placebo for Kineret, which is the trade name for anakinra, and it does list a lot number on there. So that's what those will look like. We are going to send out an initial supply, and we'll send that out in a reusable certified shipping box. The initial supply will each contain two boxes. One will be a refrigerated box and one will be room temperature, because the oral capsules can be stored at room temperature and the syringes both need to be refrigerated. So we will send those out once we know that you've had pharmacy training, you have IRB approval, those sorts of things. We are going to start shipping this week. I've reached out to a site or two, and so that they know when it's coming. We'll definitely reach out to you before and indicate, hey, we're ready to ship, confirm your address, and we'll be sending that out. We're sending out enough to treat about 6 subjects, 2 in each arm. So that's about a little bit more than that. I know I'm sending out maybe a full box of placebo, so syringes, for example, so that kind of thing. But those are reusable certified shipping boxes. So upon receipt, if you this is what you guys do every day. I'm not going to read this to you, but you have that as a reference there. But if you would send the signed packing list back to us via email or fax, if that's more convenient for you, you can do that. But then also the shippers will come back to us. And each shipper will receive a return air, or will include a return air bill for you to return those to us. And so we only have a limited number, so if you could send those back to us as soon as possible, that would be great. There is a drug order form that we will that is available in the pharmacy manual. I know I need to send out the appendices for that. I will put those in the study team uses box for that. I will put those there so that you guys can access those. I know last time we had some issues with sending files and large files, so hopefully you'll be able to get them from there. If not, please contact me. I'll be more than happy to make arrangements to get those to you. Just when you reorder, know that it could take us up to 7 days. Feel free to give us a call if you have some urgency. We'll see what we can do. But in Appendix B is the drug shipment request form. So talking about randomization, we are using REDCap to do the randomization for this study. You would navigate to the REDCap address there, and then you'd select AlcHepNet under your projects. And then next you would click on Record Status Dashboard here. That's under the data collection header. And then next you would click on the drop down to select dashboard. Next to dashboard display, and you would select pharmacy dashboard, and that dashboard is going to contain all the subjects that are randomized or those who need to be randomized for your site. So you can see here they pulled down and they have pharmacy dashboard, and then here's the list of subjects here with the unique identifiers here. And so what you would do is you would click on the button here to the right to randomize. And then once you do that, then you get this form. Here you do have the subject's ID and date of birth. If you click on randomize, there will be a pop-up that says, hey, the MELD score was not entered. That just means that the site coordinator may need to go back and add that information there. So that would stop you. You wouldn't be able to randomize. But if it is answered, which here they selected one, then we can go ahead and hit randomize. So when we do that, then we get this screen here. So this shows here that our subject number was randomized to the anakinra zinc arm. We have their date of birth as well as a second verifier. So you can then, or you need to change this to complete. Oops. Change the drop down to complete and hit save and exit the form. You can do a screen print of this so that we put this with our order so we know that we should be dispensing for this patient, and we have their date of birth and subject number. So in the event that there's a downtime with REDCap, our emergency support team with our data managers will be able to help us to be able to get what we need to be able to dispense and take care of our patients. So hopefully that won't happen, but if we plan for it, then we have a good plan, and hopefully it won't happen. But if there are issues, contact Janetta Mateson, and her phone number or email is there. And then there's also a generic mailbox that I assume, like ours, is triaged and looked at too. But they'll take good care of us. And if you don't happen to have that information and you know the randomization is down, go ahead and contact me or our IDS, and we can get this contact information for you as well. This is just another way of looking at what I've said a couple times already. So if a patient is randomized to the prednisone arm, where they're getting prednisone 40 milligrams by mouth daily for 30 days, this is what's actually going to be dispensed on day 0. Before this recent amendment, we did have dispensing at several time points at day 0, day 3, and day 28. With this new, with these changes, we were able to make it so that we're only going to dispense once on day 0. And so on day 0, we're going to dispense the entire prednisone supply, the entire prednisone placebo supply, the entire zinc placebo supply, and the entire subcutaneous supply. So hopefully that's helpful for the other sites here as well. In the anakinra zinc arm, this is what they would also get. Again, there's always 2 oral therapy bottles. One they're going to take on days 1 through 30. The second one days 1 through 90. And then always they'll get a subcutaneous therapy where they're taking 1 pre-filled syringe daily on days 1 through 14. So, as far as dispensing, how we have decided that this would look from our standpoint, and we hope would be helpful for you as well, is that on day 0, we would dispense the oral therapy. We'll dispense 2 bottles. One would be a 30-day supply of capsules labeled as prednisone placebo, 40 milligram capsules to be taken on days 1 through 30. And bottle 2 would be a 90-day supply of capsules labeled as zinc sulfate / placebo, 220 milligram capsules to be taken on days 1 through 90. We are going to label both bottles, and we're going to dispense them to the unit. They'll be labeled with both our inpatient label and our outpatient label so that the inpatient nurse can scan our barcoding while the patient is in hospital, but then that is also labeled appropriately for the patient to take home during their outpatient part. So that's what the oral therapy would look like. What we've decided to do for subcutaneous therapy is to prepare an IDS. Our IDS pharmacy will prepare a bag, and we'll do this on day 0. We are having all of our orders and things written on day 0, and then the patients start to be administering drug on day 1. So we'll prepare a patient-specific log for initial randomization and a bag that has all of the drugs, all of the subcutaneous injections in it. So for example, a daily dose bag would include 14 syringes of the syringe type assigned from REDCap, whether that is anakinra or placebo. If a patient is randomized to the prednisone arm, then they're getting placebo anakinra, or placebo for anakinra. So they would get all placebo syringes if they're in the prednisone arm, or if they're in the anakinra zinc arm, they will be receiving the active anakinra syringes, and then we would also include some placebo syringes in case there's a dose adjustment needed. So that's kind of what this table here is showing. I am not getting the same feedback that I was getting earlier, so I wanted to just check and make sure you guys can hear me. I don't know if...
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay. It sounded a little bit different, so I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. I need to make that go away. So here is, we made a little bit of changes to our patient-specific accountability log, but this is what we would send with our bag. And so for this subject, for example, is randomized to the anakinra zinc. I can match up.
Melissa, this is Natasha from UMass. Can you go back to the dispensing, please? And can you explain a little bit more about the anakinra zinc arm and the 10 placebo syringes and the 14 anakinra syringes? So whom is that going to? That's going to the floor? That's going where?
We are sending that to the inpatient pharmacy, and then the inpatient pharmacy from there is going to dispense a daily syringe based on what REDCap is telling to be dispensed. So that's just giving the inpatient pharmacy some placebo syringes in case there is a dose reduction, a change in the GFR or the platelets where the patient shouldn't receive anakinra but should get a placebo.
What about locations that have small IDS pharmacies that can't outsource the job to inpatient pharmacies? How are they handling? What is the strategy to handle the weekend where we don't come in for this daily? Like, we can't hand this out. I mean, it's already decided, was decided the first time around that this cannot be outsourced to the inpatient pharmacy. We can't add to what they're already doing. So what is the strategy behind weekends, holidays, long weekends?
Well, we made the same changes, or we made that decision before this change, and that's the same. You can dispense it on using the data that you have for Friday or the day before the holiday to dispense over the weekend. So that is allowed per the protocol.
Okay, so then it's clear that if it's a Saturday, then we're not checking labs on a Saturday morning. We're not checking labs on a Sunday morning.
Right. I mean, they may be happening, but we're not adjusting the dose based on those things. Yes.
Got you. Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem. So that's kind of what we've done here with this patient-specific form. If you are using the inpatient pharmacy, then this is where they would record, oh, okay, this patient is the anakinra arm. They should be getting anakinra. and I can log in my anakinra lot and expiration date. If there needs to be a dose adjustment to placebo, they have that opportunity to enter in the placebo information there if needed. So this is kind of what the bag looks like when we're using the inpatient pharmacy. I don't know if you're not using an inpatient pharmacy and the IDS was doing the same thing, this might be helpful too, to have it kind of all ready to where all you have to do is just dispense it. But so what we're including here is we have a patient-specific bag that is labeled for home use in case the patient's discharged. They're getting a patient-specific accountability log. I put the initial red cap randomization in there so that they can see, okay, this patient was randomized to anakinra. There would be a bag with 14 anakinra syringes and then 10 placebo syringes. Also have some blinding labels, and then syringes, or syringe labels for day 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth to day 14. Actually, we just did days 3 through 14. We assumed they'd probably be in the hospital on days 1 and 2. So those labels are to be used in the event that a patient is discharged, and we'll talk more about that later, but that's kind of what that one looks like. For the prednisone arm, these subjects are not receiving an active syringe, they're getting placebo syringe. So we have this, the patient-specific accountability for the placebo dispensing. So you have the randomization here on the right showing that it's randomized to prednisone, that there is a subject ID and date of birth here. And then we would do a similar bag. So you have the big patient-specific bag. It's labeled for home use, patient-specific accountability log. We're going to highlight whatever they should be on, and then educate that, if they have to dispense, or if we have to dispense placebo in, well, that wouldn't be true in this case, but in the anakinra, then you have that section to be able to do that if necessary. We'd also include the initial red cap randomization, a placebo bag with 14 placebo syringes, 14 blinded labels, and then the day labels for each of the syringe if needed and those would be used in the event of discharge home. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. On day 7 or at an unscheduled visit, patients will be coming in on day 7, or if they were coming in for another unscheduled visit, the doses may be adjusted based on labs. So in this case, the research nurse would provide a new prescription if a dose adjustment is needed. So if the platelets are less than 50,000 or the GFR is less than 30, the research nurse would also return the patient's supply to the IDS pharmacy for redispensing. And basically what we need to do then is we need to remove active anakinra and replace it with placebo if the dose is being adjusted, or nothing if they're on the placebo arm. So that is something that may happen there. The anakinra syringes shouldn't be shooken, so we make a note not to send those via pneumatic tube. That's just what we do with standard of care, so we're doing that here as well. But we would also want to label which syringe to administer on each treatment day, and that's to account for the dose adjustment. So if today is, well, let me go on to the next slide. There's a visual of that. So it's a couple slides ahead, so we'll come back to that piece. But so on day 1 through 14, while the patient is inpatient, they're going to have blinded dispensing from the pharmacy, whether that's the inpatient pharmacy. We're able to work with our inpatient pharmacy. We are going to do the red cap we're going to log into REDCap and do the REDCap piece, and then we're going to send to the pharmacy that REDCap randomization to the pharmacy and say, here's this, please dispense this for the patient. So they're going to be actually doing the physical dispensing, but we are doing the randomization for them. But okay, so we're doing that. And then the central pharmacy will then, based on what is assigned from REDCap, they'll label the daily pre-filled syringe for the day and deliver it to the unit. The pharmacy needs to place a blinding label around the barrel of each pre-filled syringe before dispensing it to the unit or to the patient. And so the blinded label kind of looks like this. It just kind of over and over says, study anakinra / placebo, blinding label, do not remove. And so we'll provide those labels for you to affix just around the barrel of the syringe to do the blinding. And then we're just asking them also to do the patient-specific log for the daily dose dispense. Transitioning to outpatient, so in the event that a patient's discharged on day 1 through 14, when they're still receiving the blinded subcutaneous doses, what will happen is the pharmacist will go into REDCap and indicate that the patient is being discharged. That is this line item right here. Is the subject being discharged from the hospital with study drug? And so the answer to that question would be yes. And then this generates this table here at the bottom. So in this case, this patient is randomized to anakinra and zinc. They have a GFR that is greater than 30, and they have platelets that are greater than 50,000. So this is going to instruct them to take anakinra all of the days. So we're at treatment day 6, that's what we're saying here. So it's going to say from 6 to 14 to dispense those syringes of anakinra. So if the patient were getting active or placebo, where they're alternating active placebo, that's when these day number syringe labels come into play. We'd want to label each syringe so that we know the patient's taking the anakinra on one day, placebo on another, anakinra on one, placebo on another. So the pharmacist would blind the syringes for the patient to take home to self-administer by wrapping the blinding label around the barrel of the syringe and then place the day number sticker on each syringe. Then those are placed in a protect from light bag inside the patient labeled bag. This example is if a patient has the dose adjustment. So this is treatment day 7. In this case, the patient has a GFR somewhere between 20 and 29 mils per minute. Their platelets are still good, greater than 50,000. So in this case, this would mean that the patient is transferring to every other day anakinra. So we would need to make sure that the day 7, day 9, day 11, and day 13 are placebo syringes, and then days 8, 10, 12, and 14 are the active anakinra syringes. So we would do that if we go back to this slide by doing the same thing. So, you'd have your anakinra, placebo, based on which day it is. And that's where the day number stickers come into play is very important. So patient resources, I just wanted to share what the medication log looks like. Each patient will get this from their research nurse, and this is where they're going to write the dose, that they took the dose on what date and at what time. So this is several pages long, so there's places for oral medication 1, prednisone placebo, there's places for them to indicate on day 1 through 30 that they've taken that medicine, or for medication 2, the zinc placebo, days 1 through 90, where they've taken the drug, or the subcutaneous injection on days 1 through 14. So that is that. There's also medication administration document that tells the patient how to give this injection, where to give it, that kind of thing. That just would help with the nursing education of those syringes, but that's a resource for them for when they're home. For unblinding, what will happen is in the event of a medical emergency where really need to know what the patient is getting, the site investigator or designee would contact the study physician and discuss that rationale. If they need to unblind, they would contact the IU data coordinating center, the decision support to unblind what that subject is receiving. So even though pharmacy will be unblinded, we won't really necessarily be involved in sharing what the patient is receiving. There is a process for that. Just to review the drug stopping and holding, again, the platelet count, if the platelet count drops to less than 50,000 while on the study medication, the study injectable medications, then that's held and resumed when the platelet count is greater than 50,000. So if the platelet does recover, they can be given active drug again. If they're outpatient, we don't know that. This would be someone who's still inpatient. Again, if the GFR is between 20 and 30, and the patient's on anakinra, they'll be dose reduced to every other day anakinra, or if the patient is their GFR drops to less than 20 mils per minute, we'll only dispense placebo syringes until that recovers. There is an opportunity if those recover that they could be reintroduced to the drug. Weekend adjustments, this was a question we had earlier, but this is in the protocol, that the GFR and platelet values from Friday labs may be used to calculate dispensing for the weekend or before a holiday. That information is written into the protocol. Just a reminder, I shared in the chat that the SurveyMonkey link, if you would please just enter that. That would be excellent. Put it there again. And then we will begin sending out an initial supply here very soon. I think I've already contacted someone about sending a supply out tomorrow. We'll be doing that over the next few weeks, getting it for everyone. They're anticipating beginning enrolling July 2020. You know, that's if everything falls into place. So we're just trying to have drug at each of the sites so that we can meet that goal if necessary. Now, Robin asked a question, not clear, injectable held for platelets less than 50,000, or will a placebo syringe be given in place of anakinra? The placebo would be given in place of anakinra. It wouldn't technically be, it would be held by giving a placebo syringe, not necessarily stopping that medication. Hope that clears that up. I know.
Melissa, this is Reshma from Parkland.
Yes.
And my question is, I know, when patients are in-house, they get labs, random times throughout the day. And if a result is not resulted for, I don't get a creatinine back till 11 in the morning and that dose was due at 10, am I to hold off until I get a result?
What we have decided to do at our site is that we would take the most recent data. So we're just hoping that we're actually scheduling our injectables for 11 a.m. I believe. 11 or noon. We did that so that we had time to get the randomization and then get it to the unit. But we are just doing a cutoff of a certain time and then using the previous day's labs when they're available, if we don't have them.
Okay. And then when the dose is held due to any reason, they're not made up in the end, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There's another one in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Noted pill bottles are stocked at 50 counts. Want to confirm that we are only dispensing enough pills for the indicated day supply and not required. Yes, you do not need to dispense an original bottle. You can count out and dispense the exact number. So yeah, we're going to be dispensing 30 counts of prednisone placebo or 90 counts of zinc sulfate / placebo. Great question, yes. Will the light protected bags be supplied? I don't know. We were not planning to do that. If that's a problem, let me know. But yeah, no, we were not going to plan to supply the light protect from light bags. DSMB meeting frequency or schedule. Can you answer that, Savannah? I don't know that off the top of my head.
So the first DSMB will be 3 months after the first patient is enrolled, and then every 6 months after that.
Awesome, thank you.
If you do not have an IDS member on the site on the weekends, how should discharge just be handled?
That makes it tricky. I would think that their IDS would have to come in and dispense that, or so that they could be discharged. I haven't had to solve for that issue. We are, like I said, we are using our inpatient pharmacy to help us with that. So they would be here on site to be able to do that. That's a good question.
I know you guys had talked about the REDCap not providing a universal login for inpatient pharmacy. Is that still true, that they won't do that? That might help that weekend discharge.
Janetta or
Yeah, this is Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
I'm one of the data managers with the study. So providing a universal login and ID would be a violation of the HIPAA security rule, and so we cannot do that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.